Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of AEW's Fight for the Fallen event that took place in Charlotte, North Carolina on Wednesday night. A lot of things to talk about this week, so let's dive right in. The show begins with a 10-man elimination tag team match as the Elite take on Hangman Page and the Dark Order. And the stipulation is if Hangman and the Dark Order lose, Hangman Page loses his #1 ranking in the singles division, and the Dark Order lose their tag title shot they're owed. But man, can we talk about the intros for a second? The team entrances, holy shit. Honestly, in my opinion, the show peaks with these intros and the crowd reactions they get. Because first of all, Page of the Dark Order get this awesome, like, what is a cowboy video package to the tune of like an alternate version of Page's theme. And you see the Dark Order members with like a cowboy shadow next to them. There's the hat in the shadow, but not on them. Like, they're all inner cowboys. And it's so well done. And their big entrance coming out live to the crowd gets this massive ovation. And then you've got the Elite, who've got a big send-up with Space Jam, the delicious corporate synergy, as Excalibur puts it on commentary here. The Elite squad, of course, they're in North Carolina, so Kenny gets the big North Carolina from Justin Roberts, playing that whole thing up from the last several months. And the crowd dug it. They loved all the presentation and stuff. And of course, with the Elite squad, the basketball theme came into handy because at one point they're doing an indie taker, and they try and dunk the basketball while they do it, but they fuck up and they get a "you still miss" chant. But no, the entrances for these teams were just phenomenal. The crowd is into every moment in this match. Kind of a scary moment at one point for Stu Grayson, where he does like a springboard flip-de-doo to the outside, and of the 5 people on the floor, not one person catches him, which seems pretty unacceptable. We're down to 3-on-1 by the end. Hangman Page all by himself against Omega and the Bucks, but Page is able to kick out of a lot of stuff, withstands a lot of punishment, looks like a total badass hero here. He eliminates one of the Young Bucks down to 2-on-1. Ultimately, one of the Jacksons distracts Page. That allows Omega to hit the One-Winged Angel to win the match for his team. So right now, like, what is the all-out main event? Because if Hangman Page is gone from the top 1 of the rankings, like, how are they going to get back to that point? It's pretty obvious they're going Page and Omega unless something drastic happened. But like, how are they going to get back to Page and Omega at the pay-per-view? There's still time for them to finagle this, but it just seems like one extra step they didn't really need. But I mean, besides the whole ramifications of like where that's going, the match itself was freaking awesome. Alex Marvez backstage with Pac, wondering where's the rest of Death Triangle, and Pac says the Penta and Rey were held up at the airport or intercepted. Suddenly we see Andrade and Chavo Guerrero and their nameless third assistant with the tablet showing up, and Chavo says the Lucha Brothers were picked up by their people in a limousine at the airport, and they'll be here any minute now. They never do show up for the rest of the episode, and Andrade basically telling Pac, keep a closer eye on his people, treat them better and stuff. So it's, again, trying to recruit the Lucha Brothers, trying to steal them away from Pac here. Interesting that, it seems that I thought they were just adding Chavo Guerrero to Andrade's stable of handlers and stuff, but it appears from the onset that they just swapped one Guerrero for the other. It's not Vicky and Chavo who are going to be in this corner. It seems like it's just going to be Chavo, unless Vicky's just being saved for the live in-ring stuff. It's time for Ricky Starks' FTW Championship celebration. We see Taz standing on this tall pedestal, like away from the stage, just kind of by himself. I think he's DJing this thing at first, but it's not the case. But he introduces Starks, the new champion, who's accompanied by Hook. Powerhouse Hobbs is not there. They say he's recruiting. And there's a big brass band playing around the ring, but I think it's just plants who are playing on a recording, because that's definitely Jake Manning playing the trombone, the man scout, who's like right there by the ramp. So yeah, it's not, if there are legitimate musicians in that band, you don't see them here. So anyway, Starks on the microphone, and by the way, Hook's just standing next to him holding the flowers that somebody gave Ricky. And so Starks is just running down Brian Cage and how much of a failure and an embarrassment he was, how he held Ricky back and was responsible for all his losses and shortcomings. And there's some kind of "we can't hear you" chant from the crowd. There must be some like thing where they can't hear the monitors or the speakers or whatever. And Ricky tries to play it off by saying, "You can't hear me because you're inbred." This thing's kind of falling off the rails. The fans lose interest. But Brian Cage then does show up and do a big pop. He shows up there. He takes out Jake Manning, the trombone player. He gets in the ring. He breaks the trombone in half. Ricky throws the bouquet of roses at Cage. So this big giant, beast of a man, the Swolverine, is thwarted by flying roses as Starks and Hook escape unscathed. I'm like, Hook couldn't even take a bump for Cage here? That was just kind of a weird ending. The whole thing was just so bizarre. Taz on the giant tower and doing his dance dancing as Ricky Starks came out. That's a GIF waiting to happen if it hasn't happened yet, folks. And then just the whole, the way it ended with Cage like not even getting a lick in on anybody. Like, come on, like you're your gear, like fucking slam somebody. You just clothesline Jake Manning on the outside and took the trombone, and it just ended kind of flat for me. Big announcement, you got a pre-recorded message from Hiroshi Tanahashi, the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling, challenging the winner of the IWGP US title match for later in the night. And then we go to our next match as FTR, accompanied by Tully Blanchard. By the way, sweet new tracksuits, guys. Going against Santana and Ortiz, who are accompanied by Conan. The first time these teams have actually faced off in a 2-on-2, a proper tag team environment here. The match was okay, is the best way to describe it. It felt they didn't really get into like a second or third gear. At one point, Cash Wheeler is like knocked into like the turnbuckle, and like he cuts his arm really badly on, I'm guessing, the turnbuckle, the bolt or something, and he cuts his arm real bad. He has to duck out for the rest of the matchup here, so it's Dax versus Santana and Ortiz by himself. It ends with Dax hitting a brainbuster to win the match, but it's kind of anticlimactic. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and so it feels like the match, or the ending of it at least, was kind of rushed, which is understandable. Hope Cash is okay. You're kind of hoping that this match could have gone to a higher plane, but we didn't get a chance to see it this week. We get a promo backstage from Dr. Britt Baker, and man, the poor gal cannot catch a break, or like in this case, I guess she can, because she shows off her wrist brace after having broken her wrist apparently in her title match with Nyla Rose last week, which, man, just like the bad luck that follows this woman. I feel really bad for her. But she says, she keeps getting hurt, and poor Rebel cannot protect her all by herself. She alludes to the fact they may be recruiting somebody to watch their back, but I don't know if that was a throwaway line or there's maybe planned seats for something. And then she wraps up the promo by saying, to all the people out there who are holding their breaths waiting for her to fail, they might as well prepare to suffocate. Nice little line there. And then elsewhere, Alex Marvez talks to Darby Allin and Sting, talks about the big announcement that Tony Khan had just before that the first dance of Rampage is going to be at the United Center in Chicago. And Darby talks about how he's wrestled a lot of people who claim to be the best, and AEW is the place to settle these differences, especially if you claim to be the best in the world. Ooh, I see what you did there. Ooh, you're very clever, guys. The IWGP US title defended for the second week in a row now as the new champ Lance Archer defends against Bullet Club's HIKULEO, accompanied by Papa Haku. Haku does get involved in this match. During the break, he actually gets the Tongan death grip onto Archer when the referee's not looking, and a great call from JR after they come back from break where he says, I don't know what the ref would have done had he seen it. You could call this match physical, or as JR describes tonight, bowling shoe ugly. There's a massive superplex from these two tall boys in the ring. The match ends with a blackout onto HIKULEO for Archer to win and retain. This match, it was good for what it was as kind of a hoss fight. HIKULEO still very green from the looks of this thing. It was not a clean match totally, but I think the announcers were very high on him throughout this thing, so clearly they're hoping, they and New Japan, hoping for more good things out of him here, and he has a lot of upside, but this match was not perfect, let's just say. Marvez in the go position with Cody Rhodes backstage, where he's asked about his match with Malakai Black next week, and Cody gets a few words out. So much going on in our world. Bam! Malakai Black attacks, and they has fight. They make their way onto the stage, and Malakai just downs Cody with a single flying knee, and then referees and other wrestlers try and break it up. Fuego del Sol eats a black mass, and Malakai tells Cody, welcome to the House of Black. So some cryptic words, and Cody appears to be down and out and really kind of on the ropes here going into their very blatant good versus evil match going into next week. That should be a good match, by the way. I'm looking forward to that. The TNT champion Miro's got some things to say. He points out that all those open challengers to the TNT title have dried up since he won the belt. He also calls out his opponent for next week, Lee Johnson, and he says that the only two things that motivate him are God and his double-jointed wife. Nice. Six-man tag match up next as the HFO, that's Angelico and Private Party, take on the Jurassic Express and Christian Cage. A few minutes into the match, you've got Marco Stunt and Christian chasing Matt Hardy away from ringside after he gets involved physically. Marco losing his shoe as he's running there, and Excalibur says one day he'll get shoes with laces on them. Private Party with some Hardy Boys inspired attire and some in-ring action as well. Luchasaurus gets a big hot tag. It's a German suplex, a triple German onto all three of his opponents, which is pretty impressive. It's pretty academic here after that hot tag. Christian with a big splash onto Mark Quinn for the good guys to win. Then after the match, Blade decks Christian on the outside with the brass knuckles, so Blade appears to have bounced back from his little mini program with Orange Cassidy, moving right on to Christian Cage as kind of the hired gun of the HFO. As far as the match goes, yeah, it was okay, but I mean, it just felt like, again, kind of a match where it's a recurring trend on the night where, whether it's by design or not, it feels like there's a lot of matches that just feel kind of like, oh, that felt shorter than it should have been, or that it felt like it could have gone. We get a promo package from Nick Gage where he asks Chris Jericho, what can you possibly do to me that I haven't already experienced? And he promises that Jericho will be in pain for the rest of his life after this, and that he will not make it to Labor number 3. Up next, it's a pure babyface versus babyface matchup here as Julia Hart of the Varsity Blondes group takes on the newly officially signed to AEW Thunder Rosa. It's some good back and forth here. Julia looks okay against the more established veteran Thunder Rosa. She's able to escape a leg grapevine, but she does fall to the Fire Thunder driver for Thunder to win. Again, another match that was kind of surprisingly short. It seemed very basic. It's like, hey, go out there, have like a 3-4 minute match and just make it look good. That's pretty much all it was. There's not much else to it, honestly. We hear a promo from Jon Moxley where he talks about how frustrating it is to see these Olympic athletes going to Japan, and he is not allowed to for some reason. He's got all these obligations and these matches and these fights he wants to have in New Japan that he just cannot commit to right now. Calls out Hiroshi Tanahashi for what he said earlier. It's, you've been dodging me for months, but he says he will get a shot at Tanahashi at some point in the future when he can. Then it's time for our main event, the second labor of Jericho. It's a no rules match as the Painmaker, Chris Jericho. He's put back on the eyeliner and the fedora for this one, folks, taking on Nick Gage. And I am surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how they didn't really strip down Gage's shtick at all. Like, he couldn't be doing mosh pit things with the fans because there's a distance thing. And they didn't get For Whom the Bell Tolls, so it's kind of a sound alike for that song. But, you know, Justin Roberts gave him the whole intro. He's, you know, the representing Murder, Death, Kill Gang, Eastern Bloc. He's, you know, the Deathmatch King, Nick freaking Gage. The whole 9 yards. So I think it was nice they gave him that kind of respect and giving him the full-fledged entrance. MJF joins the commentary team with a big bucket of popcorn and the most obnoxious shoes I've seen since Zicky Dice. First thing Nick Gage does in this match, he swipes with the pizza cutter and slashes Jericho's arm, so blood is already drawn. They're brawling here. Gage produces the light tubes, but Jericho's got a bat. Gage carving up Jericho's forehead with the pizza cutter, but then the perfect like shot chaser. They go right to commercial break, and the break during picture-in-picture is for Domino's Pizza with the pizza cutter. Gage spends the entirety of the commercial break looking for a large pane of glass under the ring to the point where he's got to get one of the ring crew to help him get it out. They make this glass chair bridge kind of apparatus, and Jericho ends up hitting him with a Hurricane Rana off the top rope through the glass, and Jericho almost broke the glass himself with his feet the way he came down. So very close call there. Jericho does take a bump when Gage blocks the code breaker on the broken glass, and then you've got just multiple light tube shots to Chris Jericho, and like Gage is stabbing him in the forehead with the broken light tube. It is hard to watch, but at the same time, I just sat there in awe of the fact that Chris Jericho, a man who has no reason to ever do this sort of thing, is subjecting himself to that, and he placed his trust in Gage. In the end, Jericho's able to block another light tube attack, hit Gage with it, the Judas effect, covers and wins and completes the second labor of Jericho. This match was not pretty, but it did what it was set out to do. It was shocking, like I said, hard to watch at times, and at times it looked like Jericho was actually walking Gage through some of it at different points. Like I said, all the credit in the world goes to Jericho for doing what he did and absorbing what he did in this match. I thought that as hard to watch as it was sometimes, it's one of those train wreck things. It's hard to watch, but you can't look away. It did tell a good story. I think as far as death matches go, it was good for what it was. It got the reactions from the crowd that I'm pretty sure they wanted. And again, on a note for Nick Gage, him getting the exposure and this legitimacy that he has here with AEW, I think it's a big win for him and for his fans and fans of the independent scene, some more of the fringe elements of it, and the deathmatch scene as well. I think it's like, you can have your different opinions on deathmatch wrestling, but when it comes to that style, Gage is certainly at the top of the list of performers in that category. I think for him to get the stage, get the platform in AEW, I think it just shows more how AEW is open and receptive to all these different styles of wrestling. It's not just one homogenized thing with them, and I do appreciate that. But we're not done yet, because before we go off the air, MJF announces the next opponent, the next labor of Chris Jericho. It's a match where Jericho must hit a top rope move to win the matchup, and he's going against his old WCW rival, The Juice, Juventud Guerrera. And that match, I am excited for, because in case you have not been paying attention to where Juvi's been in the last 15-20 years, he's not aged a day and can still go relatively well for a man of his age. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Jericho and Juvi, 15-20 years later after their WCW days is going to be like. My grade for the Fight for the Fallen event is a C+. Honestly, I think this show peaked at the opening match, the 10-man elimination match. Like, those badass entrances, and the match itself, I think, told the best story and had the best pace out of everything else in the show. Besides that, afterward, everything was just kind of like, okay. Like, it peaked again with the death match with Jericho and Gage. Again, it was just a spectacle, hard to watch sometimes, but again, I think they accomplished what they wanted to, and I do give AEW credit for willing to go outside the box and do something as risky as this for your main event. I think that other parts about the show are just kind of leaving me going, what is, like, this could have been better, basically. Like, a lot of the matches felt too short, whether it was by design or the case of FTR and Santana and Ortiz, felt like it was rushed due to Cash's unfortunate injury. The FTW title celebration just had me going like, what is this? WTF FTW. So many things about this segment were just kind of like, why'd you do it this way? What if you tweaked it just a little bit and it would have been a little bit better? Also, I have to say, I'm loving where the labors of Jericho are going so far, because they've been all over the place. We had Shawn Spears in week 1, Nick Gage this week, and now next week it's Juventud Guerrera. There does not appear to be a clear narrative or coherent thread when it comes to the labors of Jericho, and I'm totally here for it. Very excited to see where labors 4 and 5 take us. But what did you think of this week's show, folks? Let me know in the comments section below, and stay tuned for tomorrow night when we put out the latest edition of This Week in Regret, the podcast, where Jay Biggs and I will talk about all the latest goings-on from the last 7 days of wrestling, as well as talk about our favorite things in wrestling for the week. You're going to want to listen to this one, folks. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.